So what you're telling me is that there is no hope, President Stephen Michaels said wearily. He ran his fingers through his professionally styled hair, which a couple of weeks ago had looked very good at his RE election ceremony. The ruby red stood out vibrantly against his dark skin, while his brown eyes had, back then, shone with a personal triumph. It had been a long 2 weeks since the object had been spotted, full of disappointment and despair. Meetings had been called, conventions had been attended, emergency sessions had been announced. The United Earth government seethed with accusations and flailing ineffectualism, all in an effort to distract from the simple truth. Respectfully, sir, Dr. Nadia Chen said carefully but firmly, there is always hope, just, well, maybe not for this planet. She was a crisp, no-nonsense kind of woman, whose short stature was irrelevant to her natural, intimidating charisma. Her round face, sensible short black hair and dark eyes were seared into the fear centers of many a grad student. Even a few of the presidential guards were very careful around her. She currently gave the impression that planets came and went, and it wasn't worth getting in a tizzy about one being blown into a million pieces. They sat alone in the main office. Its circular walls showed projections about trajectory and possible impact. Even the most optimistic projections showed almost complete destruction at the metaphorical hands of the object, by the simple expedient of mass and velocity. It was large, several times larger than Luna, but far denser, probably metal cored, and given its visible blue shift, it was going very close to the speed of light. Or, President Michaels added wearily, any of the others in the system. And that was a fact too. Earth wasn't the only planet. With its own inescapable doom accessory, every planet had an identical object on its way. And that was comforting in a way. It felt less personal and more general, and it definitely galvanized the planetary governments into cooperation. Even the people were united mostly. Across the network, people panicked and commiserated, but they did so together. VR landscapes were built that people might spend as long as possible enjoying themselves, people who had hated each other during the Martian Wars, or the Venusian scourings, and had contributed significantly to trying to stomp each other out, found themselves united in inevitability. President Michaels pulled a bottle out from a drawer and a couple of glasses. Then, he said tiredly, perhaps it's time for a long shot. It's not ready, Dr. Chen protested mildly, though she accepted the glass of amber liquid. It smelled of expensive forgetfulness, and she wondered if this would be the last bottle of it anyone would drink. Ready or not, President Michaels said firmly, it's the only way to survive. He drained his glass indelicately, then poured another, while Dr. Chen sipped hers quietly. The AGI Rights Commission doesn't like the idea, she added, while the president snorted. They can try to make the journey themselves then, he said with an edge in his tone. Did any of them volunteer? After a moment's alcoholic silence, Dr. Chen sighed and raised her glass, a gesture that the president echoed. The long shot. They toasted and prepared for the end of humanity. Sensor Director Tarvik snored gently in his chair. His soft, chubby body filled out his ceremonial uniform, and his furry coat beneath showed through where it failed to contain his bulk. He had worked hard at bowing and scraping to imperial authorities for the cushiest possible position in this miserable farming colony. Since the locals lacked spaceflight, typically he just had to note local positions of celestial bodies and any shifts in their orbits that might impede the tribute fleet when it shows up. But the fleet wasn't due for several full cycles, so the sensor director could relax and enjoy his nap typically. The nerve tingler implanted in his skull abruptly shunted Tarvik out of a pleasant dream about his burrow and the theoretical females he could have doting on him once he got his life together. Cold reality arrived with the sound of a klaxon, the unidentified craft alarm. Tarvik suppressed a wave of panic that set his ears to flicking anxiety and tapped into the sensor info streams. An unidentified craft could be pirates, a damaged Imperial ship, or maybe even some rich core worlders on a secret joyride. But the object that showed up on the info stream and projected its way into Tarvik's brain looked nothing like any Imperial designs. It was long and narrow, covered in pockmarked white metal, and the tattered broad remains of what looked like a foil sail. It reeked of radiation to his sensor-synchronized senses and sounded like it was going near light speed, but to his horror, it was slowing down. That meant it was piloted, which meant poor Tarvik was soon scrambling through the databanks to look for first contact procedures. The bright light of the approaching star glistened across the dark surfaces of the remaining solar cells on the tattered wings of the spacecraft. It fed life into ancient dormant systems, which slowly started to spool up. Nano-swarms began to stir and flow through the body of the ship, responding to automated systems, examining the rows and rows of diamond spheres. In each, a quantum crystal containing the blueprint for a human consciousness still awaiting a body. They poured over the damaged systems and began to cannibalize the irreparable to support the salvageable. Captain VX-886 slowly felt his consciousness seeping together into a cohesive whole out of the damaged systems, collecting around a single thought: the long shot has landed. Unaware of this internal activity, an Imperial utility craft cautiously guided the time-worn vessel towards the only space station in the system. With luck, Director Tarvik thought, it will just be a probe, and no one will mind if it goes missing.